What's going on, guys? Double Axis podcast number 3. Like to thank you guys for watching the first couple. Please be sure to subscribe and like our videos if you do enjoy them. Check us out on social media. We're on Instagram and Facebook at Double Axis Podcast. As you can see, today's going to be a little bit different. Not only am I going at this solo, but we're also going to talk about a different subject. Today I'm kind of going to talk about my hunting journey, what got me started in with hunting, where it has evolved to at this point, and also going to talk about my hunting brand, Heathens Hunting. I don't know if you can see the t-shirt, but just some things that I'm going to go over here. I just want to give you kind of a recap. So we're going to talk about my hunting journey, how I began, my learning process, the actual hunts themselves, the equipment that I use, my brand, and how I see everything going to the future. So, my early life, I was born and we moved into a house in the city. So didn't really have any experience out in wilderness or country life or anything like that till the time I was 5. Pretty much, lived in town, did the normal things, playing with neighborhood kids, stuff like that. There was nobody in my family that really actively hunted at that point. My grandfather had hunted earlier on in his life, and he had kind of moved past that at this point. I had some uncles and stuff that hunted, but nobody that I was close enough to be involved with it. So, I grew up in the city till I was 5, and then we moved out in the country and kind of started a new lifestyle. Me and my brother was always, playing outside, doing the normal kids things, climbing trees, things like that. And at this point, I started spending a lot more time with my grandparents, kind of learned how to use firearms, started kind of doing some minor hunting at this point, just the normal country kids, snake hunting, things like that. But really started to take interest in firearms and learning from my grandfather, who was a varmint hunter and had a lot of knowledge about calibers, gun safety, accuracy, things like that. So really started to kind of take an interest in that, reading old gun books. My grandpa had these shooter Bibles from the 70s and 80s when he was really involved in reloading and like I said, the varmint hunting. So I remember going through them, picking out guns that I would like to have. Kind of at this point, it was still just a target shooting thing, though, for me. It wasn't necessarily, hey, I'm going to take this gun and I'm going to go out and deer hunt and stuff like that. So it was really valuable for me to learn all these different calibers, to have these resources, to learn the different firearms and stuff like that, and kind of prepared me for when I got a little bit older and was able to buy my firearms. So moving into my teenage life, I had been living out in the country for 5-10 years at this point. Really started to kind of develop a different mindset as far as what my interests were. At this point in time, I played a lot of sports and didn't really have the opportunity to do much on the side. But I remember distinctly getting like a Sportsman's Guide catalog or something like that. And my grandparents always had a great Christmas for me and my brother and my sister and my family in general. And I can remember writing down all this hunting stuff that I wanted because for years I had seen people hunting on the farm and they'd harvest the deer and bring them out, and I would look at them and thought it was so cool, and really started to kind of, like I said, change my interest in wanting to do something different. So I remember writing a deer stand down and writing a bow and writing a muzzleloader. All of these things I had no idea what to do with, but it was just something that had piqued my interest at that point. I would go out during the off season and they would have deer stands hung and stuff like that, and I can remember climbing up in there and pretending like I was going to hunt or whatever. Had no idea what I was doing. Lost patience very quickly, but just something that I used to do as a kid. Is that interest started to kind of enter my mind, and at that point coyotes and stuff were just foreign to me and seemed so exotic, and deer hunting, other than seeing the deer that were harvested, brought through and stuff like that, all seemed so cool. And something that I really wanted to do. But I still didn't have the time. I played basketball and I played baseball. Like I said, none of my relatives that were close hunted or anything, so I couldn't really learn from anybody. And so my grandpa kind of shot all the hunting stuff down. He said basically you didn't have time, wouldn't know how to do it, stuff like that. Of course, I argued at the point, I'll figure it out. I'll know what to do after I do it for a while. And there was no YouTube at this time or really much on the internet, so he was probably right. I probably didn't have anybody to learn from. So moving into my early adult life after I graduated, I got a good job, and I actually had to move away for a while. So I lived in a couple different cities for a couple years, and just really kind of got my feet wet with my job. My hobbies and stuff at that point in time really didn't involve anything constructive. Mainly just kind of sitting on the couch and going out and partying and stuff like that, playing video games. Nothing constructive. I had played athletics, my whole life at that point, so really didn't have anything to dive into competitively other than video games. So several years away, ended up actually moving back home after a couple years, and at that point in time, I'm still poor, but at this point in time I was even more poor and didn't really have any options for where I was going to live. And my grandfather had an old trailer on his land that my great-grandmother actually lived in. So he offered it up to us, and me and my wife and my small child moved in there for a little bit of time. Growing up, my great-grandma was always there no matter what I did. When I was playing outside, climbing trees, whatever, she would always be watching. And she had this old cheap set of, I think they were Bushnell, maybe even a cheaper brand than that, binoculars, and she would be watching us out the window with the binoculars. And just a fond memory that I had of my childhood, to kind of know I'm sure it was probably annoying to me at the time, but now as an adult looking back on it, it's a really fond memory for me, because she just was always checking out. I was always out there, hitting baseballs or throwing baseballs or climbing trees or getting all kinds of shenanigans with my brother. So when we moved in, we had to clean it out. Nobody had lived there for several years. And when I was going through some stuff, I actually found the binoculars that she had looked out the windows. And that was just something that I didn't get rid of. I set them down, on the counter or whatever. I put them in a drawer, something, but I had them close by. So kind of the more that I lived there, the more I became accustomed to living out in the country again, to being around my family and stuff like that. The more I started kind of take notice of the things around me. And, like I said before, I really didn't have anything to kind of be competitive for anymore. No challenges, no hobbies or anything that were constructive. I was burned out completely on sports. Played sports so much growing up, I really just couldn't even watch it on television anymore. So I distinctly remember, one day looking for the Outdoor Channel and not having it. So I actually had to call DirecTV to order the Outdoor Channel. And so I started watching, different hunting shows, Red Arrow or Ted Nugent, Buck Commander, Steven Rinella Show, Meat Eater, and then, in my opinion, the greatest hunter alive, Jim Shockey. And I started, kind of getting back into this interest that I had as a teenager, really finding all of the different hunting as a challenge. Is something that looked very interesting. On TV, they made it look easy, so I thought it would be something that would be relatively easy that I could kind of jump into right away without knowing a whole lot about it. But, once this interest was kind of in my mind, I remember picking up my great-grandma's binoculars, and we had a big open window in the back part of the trailer that looked over all the bottoms. And having those binoculars in my hands all the time, and seeing deer pass through, seeing coyotes pass through, seeing turkeys pass through, whatever, just something that became kind of like an every morning and every evening routine for me. Just going to kind of look out those windows to see what was moving through, continuing to watch the shows and learning more, and getting subscriptions to like Field and Stream and things like that, and reading up on it. And of course, at this point in time, the internet had exploded, so I was able to have all these resources to look up hunting tactics, how to field dress animals, all of these things that were kind of at my fingertips now that weren't there before. But I still felt like I needed someone there to kind of guide me, to help me get my feet wet and get started on the whole process. And so I called my dad and I was like, do you know anybody that hunts? Because my dad, being an older guy and more of a generational thing, having a lot of friends or family that kind of hunt, extended family that hunt. And he brought up one of his former teammates in basketball. We'll call him Mike B. And so he's like, give Mike a call. He's been hunting for a long time. I think he still hunts, and he might be able to kind of help you out. So I had no idea about seasons or anything at this point, really. So I gave him a call and I was like, hey, I kind of want to start hunting, and wanted to see if maybe you wanted to come and help me out with kind of learning the ropes. And he kind of laughed and said, well, first of all, nothing's in season right now. None of the games none of the game that you would harvest and eat and stuff like that. And he said, but turkey season's kind of right around the corner, so why don't we plan to go hunting turkey season? So I didn't really even have a gun that I could use, so I had to start researching that. I was able to actually inherit a shotgun from my wife's grandfather, and so it worked out to where I could change a couple things out, put a different choke on it, and I had a turkey gun at that point. So I go out and begin my hunting journey with my dad's friend Mike. It was a good bonding experience. He kind of asked me at this point, where do you think would be the best place to hunt on your farm? And I was like, well, I'm watching them with the binoculars, and they congregate in this field. Well, not knowing that there's a difference between breeding season, post-breeding season, pre-breeding season. I kind of had that fall or mentality in my mind, seeing all the birds grouped together and stuff like that. So I was like, let's go hunt in this field. I wanted to hunt in the blind because I just like to be able to move around and kind of be relaxed. But he insisted on us kind of being out in the open, which now, being a part of it for a while, I understand now. But so we kind of met in the middle and hid in some deep brush that kind of had two openings on either side. And so the first one was a complete bust. I really didn't hear much bird movement or see anything at all. So with not knowing what to expect, I was pretty bummed out. But we went back the next morning. So this was opening Saturday morning. We had no luck at all. We didn't go Saturday evening, and then we went Sunday morning. Well, we decided to kind of switch everything up a little bit and go to a different part of the farm, the back part of the farm, which we had heard a little bit of activity, but not much. And I finally won the battle because I was like, man, there's nothing up there to hide in, really, so let's take the blind. And so I had a pop-up blind, and he finally agreed to it. So we took this pop-up blind up the hill, and probably making all kinds of noise and everything else. We had it set up. It was still dark outside, and we kind of got settled in. And I'll never forget, as he kind of started his calling, right behind us, a big tom opens up with a gobble, and we're like, crap, we knew that he had to know that we were there at that point, and that we had probably busted him, and it was going to be, a losing situation for us. So, of course, as predicted, the tom flies out behind us into a field, and we don't hear from him again because I think he knew the jig was up. So sat there for several hours. Well, in my opinion, I believe that this tom actually came back, and he was working his way down the fence line, so he must have flew up in a pasture behind us and worked his way through the woods up around us. And at this point in time, he was responding to the calls and stuff like that. And so on my second turkey hunt ever, I was fortunate enough to actually put that turkey down, which to this date, 5 years in, is still my biggest turkey. 26 pounds, inch and a half spurs, 13-inch beard. So it was a big mature bird. And I remember kind of thinking in my mind, well, that was pretty easy. I think I can kind of do this by myself, not knowing, what I know now and how much Mike actually helped me out with that hunt. So I kind of went back. A couple times by myself at this point. Mike has younger sons, and he has property that he hunts as well. So really didn't get to go with each other again that year. And he kind of did his thing, and I tried to go out and do my thing. And it was I just remember being completely overwhelmed by kind of the difficulty of learning how to call, learning the movement, learning where to set up, all of these things, learning about decoys and stuff like that. And I just remember feeling just completely overwhelmed, and I didn't have any more luck that year. And so moving into the fall, into the winter, deer was really the thing that I wanted to hunt the most anyway. So I felt like I had watched enough shows, and deer hunting is such a different beast from turkey hunting, that I could kind of figure everything out on my own. So on our farm, we've had different people hunt throughout the years, but the one constant has been my now friend Bobby Epperson. He's hunted there for 25, 30 years, maybe even more than that, 30, 35 years. But he's been there every year. And so when I was telling my grandpa, hey, this is what I want to do, this is how I'm going to do it, whatever, he said, well, before you get started, you better call Bobby and make sure that you guys are on the same page, that he knows where you're going to be hunting and stuff like that. So at this point in time, Bobby was just kind of a check-in thing. Hey, Bobby, I'm going to be hunting back here. I'm going to put a pop-up blind back here. Just wanted to let you know. He said, well, that's fine. My blind's here. We're going to kind of be far enough apart that we're not going to affect each other and stuff like that. And that's really all it was. Not a whole lot of conversations in and out. Over the years, I had seen Bobby take out a bunch of deer. He actually came down and checked out my turkey the first morning that I killed it. But really didn't know him other than kind of being this guy that year after year harvested deer and stuff like that off of the farm. He had actually talked with my brother a little bit more because I was involved in sports and moved away and stuff like that. So really that's all the relationship we had at this point. So I get a 30-06, just a single shot. It's once again was kind of handed down from my wife's grandfather. Sighted in, have all these big expectations because of the stuff that I've seen on TV. I have a pretty good idea of where I want my blind and everything like that, and it was a good spot looking back on it now. So I get my blind set up, and I'm there hunting opening day. I don't think I saw anything at all in the morning, but that evening, got in there, set up and everything like that, and hadn't saw anything at all. No does, no turkeys, no anything. And kind of to my right, I see a shake coming. Well, it was kind of at the last part of shooting light, and I had seen a deer while I was setting my blind up. I was driving in and out with my Jeep. So the deer didn't really pay attention to me, but I had seen a deer, and I remember thinking, well, that's a pretty nice deer. And I feel like I had a pretty accurate assessment of what a mature deer looked like at that point, just because of the amount of television stuff that I've watched, kind of getting an idea of what other people were shooting and setting that expectation of how to identify a mature deer. And I had saw a deer the last day that I set my blind up. I had some limbs and stuff that I needed to cut off. My oldest little girl was with me at that point in time. And, I let her get up and look at him, and he was just sitting there staring at us, and I was sitting there thinking, I'll probably never see that deer again. Well, turns out I did see that deer again. And he came walking up from my right, walked right in front of my blind at, probably 60, 70 yards, so a chip shot for 30-06. trying to figure out what he was looking at, and I look over to my right and I see a smaller deer. This deer was probably an 8 or 9 pointer. Never got an accurate assessment of the points at that point in time, but the other one was probably 6 point, just a small, 1.5-year-old, 2.5-year-old deer. And I thought that the deer that was in front of me was probably a 3.5-year-old deer, and I really didn't know whether to pull the trigger or not. And I remember thinking, going into it, when I know that this is the deer is when I'm going to pull the trigger. And so I pulled the rifle up, I put it on his shoulder. He was stopped, staring at this other deer. Perfect shot. I'm sure it probably would have rolled him down the hill. He was so close, but I just didn't feel the feeling that I thought I would. I was like, there's still so much of the season left. This is a pretty good deer. And at that point in time, I had already kind of had a game plan of how I wanted my hunting to go. So I let him pass. And that night, Bobby and his wife had harvested one. I'm not really sure who had shot, but they shot, and the deer in front of me didn't even move. So I still had the opportunity to shoot at that point, but I just passed up on it. So they finally moved out. I packed up my things and I left. And they, like I said, they had harvested a deer, and I remember it kind of helping with something. I'm not sure that I actually loaded it up or anything at this point, but I remember helping or something and telling them the story. And I'll never forget kind of the interaction between me and Bobby, because I know he thought I was crazy. The first night ever hunting and passing on a good deer. And I guess looking back on it now, I can understand. But I just had from the very beginning the mindset of starting, not necessarily, I wanted to take mature deer. I didn't want to take deer that shouldn't be taken from the beginning. If I was going to go out and I was going to put the work in and put all this time, effort, everything, money into this, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't making a mistake by taking off a young deer, because you only get one buck tag a year in Kentucky. So once you pull that trigger, you're not getting that bullet back. And, I kind of told him at that point, I wanted to make sure that I was taking a mature deer. I wanted to be certain about it. I felt like I would know when this was the deer. And I know he thought I was crazy, but that was my mindset going in. I wasn't going to change it for anything. I really hate the term trophy hunting, because you might be getting a big rack, but there's more to it than that. You're taking off the most mature buck so that the other bucks in the area can kind of breed and flourish and move forward. Most of the time, the most mature buck is going to have the biggest rack. Sometimes not. Sometimes you might have a deer that's on the downswing, and he might not be as big as he was the year before. At this point in time, they're starting to lose teeth. They might not even be breeding at this point, and they're still going to fight and keep the other deer from breeding, even if they're not. And a lot of times this results in death and everything else for the younger bucks or even the older bucks, and then you have them going to waste. So my idea wasn't necessarily to trophy hunt. It just kind of goes hand in hand with my ideals, that I want to take the most mature buck. I don't want to be taking off bucks that shouldn't be taken out at that point. I want them to be able to grow and flourish and breed and kind of get into those older years to where we kind of have a better management and conservation system on our farm. So like I said, I know he thought I was crazy, but it is what it is. I sat in that pop-up blind for 3 years, and I let deer after deer go past. There was maybe one buck that I should have taken a shot at, but I just didn't really feel comfortable with it. It was kind of more dark. I didn't really have a good rest in my pop-up blind, so I would have kind of been propping up on the window. It would have been a long shot for me at that time. Growing up and not having any hunters around, yes, I was experienced with firearms, but it was like 22s and pistols and stuff like that. I didn't have a lot of experience shooting behind a scope gun, so I didn't feel comfortable with a lot of shots, and I obviously didn't. I wanted to humanely take out the animal. I didn't want to put a bad shot on it and let it get away and kind of be that blown opportunity. So let a lot of deer pass. Whether it was right or wrong, I don't know. There was a couple deer that I might have taken, but for whatever reason, it just didn't work out. Like that one time, that was a bad shot. I had another time that a deer came within 25 yards of me, and he wasn't a big mature deer, but I felt like that he could have been the right one for me that year. But somebody on the farm behind me did something that scared him. So I mean, there's just so many opportunities that came and went, even with does. Never had a lot of does on our farm, so never felt a need to take one out. There's only been 3 or 4 does kind of on the farm every year, and there's other ones that travel through, obviously, but only 3 or 4 that kind of stay. So never really felt a need to take a doe. Didn't really want a doe to be my first deer. I really wanted it to be something kind of special. So throughout this 3-year period, I'm still checking in with Bobby, and over that time period, we're getting closer. We're starting to turkey hunt together. I'm starting to kind of listen to him, going to the hunts, kind of soaking in that knowledge. He was such a valuable resource to me. Mike helped me get my start, but Bobby kind of really helped me take my knowledge of the hunting game to the next level. Just listening to him, going back and forth to hunt, sitting in the blind, whatever it may be, sitting on the ground turkey hunting, just trying to listen to get into his mind, because he knows exactly what the turkey is going to do. He knows exactly where the deer are going to do. He's a turkey master. He's a very good crow hunter. He's a coyote king. He knows exactly what they're going to do, where they're going to move, and he kills 20 plus every year at least. So really starting to develop more of a friendship and a kinship with him, and really starting to understand kind of the brotherhood that goes with hunting. You're spending all this time with a person. You're talking back and forth. There's only so much that you can talk about as far as hunting goes. At some point in time, you're going to get personal. You're going to start sharing personal experiences, personal stories. You're going to start taking jabs at them, and they're going to jab back, and there's going to be joking, and there's just a camaraderie that develops. So I really got very close to him. Like I said, he became kind of my outdoor father. I started listening to him. We started kind of developing a little bit more of a process as far as what we did every year. It started out just kind of sitting out and watching the deer go by and taking note of it and things like that. From there, we started putting out stuff that brought them in. Salt blocks, mineral blocks, corn, different wild game products. And then just kept developing to where we put cameras out, and we started to kind of have a hit list and stuff like that. And just more and more developed every year. New blinds, new spots, new tactics. Using apps on our phone to gauge the wind, to see which way the wind's going to be blowing, to see where it would be blowing for that day, to make sure that we were in the right spot. And this is all things that I saw on television, but as far as actually having experience and put it into practice in the beginning, I just kind of threw it all to the wayside. I just went and I set my blind and I waited, and it began to evolve more and more. And during this time period, what I believe to be the same deer that I saw that first night, because he had a very specific kicker that made him a 9-point, and I thought it was the same deer, and year after year I saw him growing up, and we began to call him the horse, because at one point in time Bobby had already tagged out with his buck tag, and he wanted to shoot a deer late season with his muzzleloader, and this doe came in, and behind her was a deer that he could only make out the body of, and so we began to call it the horse because it's such a big body deer. And we got him on film more and more. He's like any other big buck. He became a ghost. So early in the season we would get him on camera, late in the season we would get him on camera, but as far as actually during the season, he would just vanish. So we would really have no idea. It was kind of a very depressing scenario to anybody that's chased a big buck for a long time. They kind of understand how they can elude you how they can kind of lay low during the times that you have the best chances. And so it became a very frustrating situation. I was continuing to let deer pass. I was into my third season. At this point in time, still sitting in the pop-up blind, couldn't even stand up. We had winters that were, wind chills of -20 that I would have to take a blanket and just put it over my legs to keep from freezing to death. And at this point in time, it became very frustrating, but I still stuck by my ideas of only taking a trophy deer, and I wasn't going to settle for anything less, especially at this point. 3 years in, so much time, money, everything invested. And, that particular year, kind of like always, Bobby tagged out early. And so it was just me hunting on the farm. I had one other person to kind of deal with, but I kind of told him, hey, I'm going to be here. Don't be there then. And so, but, I was really had the ability to kind of move anywhere on the farm. And at this point in time, we only had 2 well-established places. And, working around my job, not being able to get time off around rifle season, because a lot of the people that I work with have more time in than me, and they get off around that time for Thanksgiving and other things. So really only having a limited amount of time, even during rifle season, to hunt. I had to pick my chances and my opportunities and where I was going to hunt very, very scientifically. So knowing all that, still having conversations with Bobby about where I was going to be and kind of taking his advice. And so one day we had got a little bit of a warm front, and it was going to be cooling back off that night. Rain, heavy wind, storms like that. And basically, I listened to Bobby on almost everything, but that day I had time to be out there to hunt, and I was just not going to take no for an answer. So my blind was a little tiny pop-up blind. I would have to walk all the way back across the farm. The wind was blowing 40, 50 miles an hour. I was afraid that it would actually blow away. And so my thought process was, we had, corn and stuff out, that any deer that moved would only come through certain pinch points that were protected from the wind. And so I knew that his blind was the only one to be able to do that. And even though the wind was blowing in my back, I thought that maybe it was blowing hard enough that none of the deer would actually be able to smell me. So I'm sitting in the blind, and I chased this deer for 3 years. He's been a ghost. I haven't had him on camera, and God knows when. And I'm texting back and forth with Bobby and my friend Kyle, and I'm telling them both, I don't even know why I'm here. At this point in time, we had a blind that was kind of built out of kind of a tarp material and PVC pipes. And so I remember looking up and seeing the blind going like this, and I'm like, oh my God, why am I even here? And the rain's coming down and everything else. And I literally sent, I don't even know why I'm here. I don't remember the specific time, but it was somewhere around 5 p.m. and maybe 6 p.m. I believe it was 5 though. And I hit send, and I put my phone down, and I swear to you, I looked up and that deer was standing there. I didn't see him walk up. I didn't see his approach or anything. He was already probably 10 feet out of the woods, and he was standing there. I had evolved from my 30-06 at this point. I had my first one that was a single shot. I bought the bolt action Ruger American. I didn't get good accuracy out of it. It busted me in the face, and so I have scope off permanently now. And I kind of listened to, like I said, everything that Bobby kind of influenced me with, and he had been telling me about 270 for years and years. And so at the beginning of that year, instead of using my AR 223, I actually went out and bought a bolt action 270. Remington 783 had the scope on it that came out of the box, and if you've ever picked one of those up, it's pretty much the low end quality, probably the lowest quality scope that you can have. And I had borrowed a pair of really good binoculars from my friend Kyle, and for whatever reason I didn't even pick the binoculars up. When I saw this deer and I saw him standing from the side, he was probably 120 yards away. I just felt like it was the deer that I had been chasing. And so put the scope up, and I didn't have it on full power. I had it somewhere in the middle because I really didn't know the range and stuff that I was going to have the deer at. I put it up, and I saw that it was him. Like, without a doubt, he had a very specific set of 3 brow tines on one side. I could see them. I could see the width and everything, the girth of his the side of his main beams, and I knew it was him without a doubt. And so, kind of to talk about buck fever, I was like, okay, I'm gonna crank it all the way up. I was gonna crank from 5 or whatever up to 9. I think it was a 3x9 or something like that scope. And so when I cranked it, I actually cranked it all the way down to 3. But I was shaking everything so much that I was afraid that he was going to get away. And so put the scope on him and squeezed the trigger, and the gun went off. I was still in a daze at this point in time, and he went to circle out, and I could tell that he had a little bit of limp to him. But the way the blind's set up, it kind of connects to another set of woods, and he went off into where I couldn't see him. And I heard a crash, and I remember getting out of the blind and saying to myself, please God, be on the ground. And I took about 6 more steps to the side, and I saw he was. At this point in time, it had been such an emotional kind of roller coaster for me, and Bobby had been such a big influence that I made the decision, I'm not even going to go look at this deer until I call Bobby. So ran back to the house in the pouring rain, about a mile, just full on sprint. Hadn't been playing sports in years, thought I was going to die of a heart attack. I called Bobby and I said, man, I think I shot him. And so he said, I'll be right there. So he comes, and I had a nice truck, but we decided not to take it back. It was pouring the rain. We only had a little bit of light left. Wanted to make sure that we got back there, got the deer collected. I was pretty sure he was down and he was not getting up. But we wanted to make sure that we got back there just in case, for whatever reason, he had got up and ran off. So we drive up. I couldn't even get out. I was like, Bob, you're going to have to go. You're going to have to go look, man. I can't bear the thought of it. So he gets out and he says, it's not him, man. It's not him. And, I think he genuinely thought that. But I took 2 steps out and I kind of peeked around the hood of the truck and I said, you're crazy. That is him. And so, we kind of had our celebratory experience, together. It was kind of a bonding experience because I didn't actually go look at the deer before or anything like that. And so, we got our pictures. Everything came out great right where he fell. The 270 was a fantastic choice. The deer only ran 25 yards, monster deer, probably the deer of my lifetime. 3 years coming to a head of chasing this deer, kind of him skirting us and ghosting us and having him on camera. And, I'm sure that there was other people. I know for a fact there was other people chasing him as well. And, it just never could there be a more special moment taking that first deer and kind of sharing it with the people that you hunt with. So that was my whole mindset in the beginning. Did I think it was going to take 3 years? No. Would I change anything? No. I wouldn't change freezing my butt off in a little pop-up blind. I wouldn't change, all of the heartache, all of the learning experiences. I wouldn't change it for the world because I got the deer I was chasing. He was at his peak. I don't know what would have happened a year from then. I don't know if he would have declined. I don't know if somebody else would have shot him. I really don't know. And I feel like that he had been in the breeding pool for several years at that point in time. So I know his genetics have been spread because I've seen other offspring at this point on camera, 2 years removed from that. And, so I wouldn't have changed anything. It worked out perfectly. So me and Bob continue to kind of, like I said, bond. At this point in time, we were turkey hunting together. Of course, deer hunting, and something that we've kind of started in the last couple of years is starting a predator hunt. He's always done it. He's always saw value in controlling the predator population. And over the last couple of years, we've seen our turkeys decline. We're not getting any fawns on camera, stuff like that. So I also began to understand the importance of predator control. Back where my blind was, year after year, I passed on coyotes. I didn't want to ruin my deer hunt, so I let them pass. There's no telling how many I let pass. And so, actually, the same year that I shot the big deer, was the first year that I started shooting coyotes, and the first year I shot my first coyote, and so it was something that I enjoyed. Kind of learning. It kind of started the whole learning experience all over again. Learn from Bobby on that stuff as well, to see the different methods of calling them in, the different ways to set up. How smart and cunning they are. I mean, they're. I'll stand by the decision that the best way to hunt coyotes is the deer hunt or the turkey hunt, because when I specifically go to coyote hunt, my my levels of success go way down. We have called them in before. I have shot one before calling them in, but it's very hard to do. And once you shoot that one, it changes everything. They all know. So I shot one, I guess it was late last year, and didn't see another one. Hunted several different farms and stuff like that, but it's something that I really enjoy. Something that I've been able to kind of do and branch off and be able to hunt with other people, at the same time kind of going with Bobby and learning from him, and kind of arguing different calibers and stuff like that. I listened to him on the 270 thing, so trying to get on the same page caliber wise, talking about ammunition, stuff like that. So kind of rolls into the next thing I want to talk about. Something I'm always interested in when people hunt is like, what equipment do you use? And it drives me bonkers. And I guess it's probably just me, maybe not, but to see a guy on television to talk about his brand of rifle or his brand of ammunition, but then not tell you, I'm shooting this caliber, this gun, this is what to expect from it, and things like that. I feel like a lot of them are just trying to sell products, and I'm more interested in knowing the performance. That way I can apply it towards what I'm doing hunting wise. So as I said before, I started with a 30-06 single shot, went to a bolt 30-06. I really wasn't happy with the accuracy and really the recoil with it. It was like shooting a cannon. So I went to 270. Bought the Remington 783 just because I could afford it. It was already set up with a scope, didn't have to do anything. Bought it in 270, as I said, and I was really blown away with the gun. Being a proud Kentuckian, it's made in Kentucky. Right from the get-go, I got some cheaper Hornady ammunition. I think it's called American Whitetail, Hornady American Whitetail. I popped it in, sighted it in, and was getting like between 1.25 inches and an inch groups, just straight out of the box with a $300 gun. So I was really blown away with it. At that point in time, I shot the horse right after that. He went down immediately. I had shot a coyote, and it literally, when I shot it, it fell like Wile E. Coyote hitting a wall in a cartoon. It just fell just straight over like that. And so I obviously knew the ballistic performance of the round and the gun, so I really didn't see a need to change. I shot this deer this last year with a 270, and he went even less distance than the first year that I shot. So obviously the gun's doing something right, the ammunition's doing something right. So I haven't really experimented a whole lot with the ammunition part of it. Something that I plan on doing a little bit more this year, because I bought an AR just to have a black rifle, to have a tactical gun, and it's kind of filled in my coyote gun at this point. The one that I have is not necessarily the best for coyote hunting. I have a Smith & Wesson M&P-TS. It has a 13.5 inch barrel with an 1.5 inch flash suppressor pinned to it to make it legal. So shooting out a very short barrel, I've basically kind of experienced some accuracy. I wouldn't say accuracy issues, but I'm a perfectionist. I want everything inch or under. So, at 100 yards. So I was getting like 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches with Hornady. I switched over to Nosler ammo, and I got right around an inch. And so that's something that I'm kind of looking forward to trying in my 270 this year. Some of the Nosler ammo to see if it improves my accuracy, just to kind of help my equipment out. Something else that I kind of did in the last couple of years that may be kind of an affordable option for people. I had a dog for a long period of time. He ended up passing away, and at that point I was still hunting out of my little tiny pop-up blind. just as small as you can absolutely get. I'm 6'3". I can't stand up in it. I can't move around. I can't do anything. So it's awful. And so I don't, everybody has their own way of hunting. I'm not going to criticize anybody for wanting to hunt on a tree stand. I'm sure people will want to criticize me for wanting to hunt out of a blind. That's fine. But we have so many hills and stuff where I hunt. Sitting in a blind at closer to the top of the hill, you're going to be able to see everything that's coming, just like you would from a tree stand. So I chose to hunt out of a blind. I was still in the same spot that I set it up originally for the 3 years, and I wanted a different blind option. So when my dog passed away, I had it's a 6 foot tall, 6 foot wide, 10 foot long dog kennel. And so I actually made that my blind. I took a lot of time, basically fastening different types of tarp. Found an industrial grade. I don't even really know what to call it, but it's an industrial grade fabric to put on the inside of it that kind of insulates it, controls the smell and stuff like that. And then put tarps on the outside of it. It already had a tarp for the roof, but I still covered it. I can get in and out of it really easily. A lot of times you can find those for pretty cheap, whereas the blinds and stuff, run hundreds of dollars. But, something that you can kind of do yourself. Just took bolt cutters, cut out windows specifically where I wanted, sat down on a chair, took time to cut the windows out. And, it's something that you can really use year round. And it's so big that, you could get 4 people in there, probably even more than that, but 4 people comfortably, and you can stand up anytime, you can walk around. The interiors of it is completely blacked out, so you can kind of choose what you want to wear. If you want to wear camo, that's fine. If you want to wear black, that's fine. So I've killed coyotes out of it at this point. Haven't killed a deer out of it. This deer that I killed this last year also came out of Bobby's blind, so he's obviously got the better spot, it appears. But I really like the freedom of it. It's probably something that I'm going to put a third blind up at some point in time on the farm, and I'll probably use a dog kennel again. So just kind of an interesting idea for people. So as everything progressed in the hunting and me and Bobby's hunting journey, my hunting journey, I kind of wanted to do a little bit something different. So I kind of kicked around the idea of starting to film. And I wanted something to associate, all of us together. So I was like, okay, the best way to do it is to start a brand and to film these videos and to be able to get it out to people. And so I came up with the idea of Heathens Hunting. At that point in time, I really didn't know what I wanted to call it. There's been a lot of people that have asked why I call it Heathens Hunting, so I'll do kind of a brief explanation. First of all, my mother called me and my brother heathens, and everybody in my family called us heathens all the time because we'd run around like crazy people. So, that kind of stuck in my head as being catchy, growing up. And then when I would go out and hunt Sundays, deer hunting, turkey hunting, whatever, and my grandfather and my family would go to church, I remember my grandpa always saying, you heathen, you're not going to church. And so that always stuck in my mind. And you do have to be a little bit of a wild, crazy person to endure 3 years of sitting in a freezing cold pop-up blind and all the things that hunters do, as far as putting the work in for months in advance, going out there day after day, not having success. You have to be a little bit wild and crazy. And plus, the heathens, you can put the crazy Viking axes. So it all made sense to me. It's a meaning that goes a little bit deeper than just the name. Having the kind of the family ties behind it, and kind of looking at it and smiling and thinking about my grandpa and stuff like that every time I see the logo. So I really wanted something different. I watch these hunters year after year, and they change brands. They change. Everything. I mean, everything from year to year changes with these guys, and it just seems like whoever is going to be, giving them the most money. You watch them in their interviews and stuff, and sometimes it literally looks like their eyes are moving to read off a script, and so kind of the real and the rawness is taken out of it. We're still early enough, I'm still early enough that there's a lot of really new experiences for me. I feel like I'm always going to be real and raw and tell the truth about things. I'm telling you that I'm using a $300 rifle and that I'm getting 1-inch groups. So there's no there's no benefit really to anybody in that. I'm just telling you how it is. Yes, I did upgrade the scope and stuff like that on it, but I mean, when you're getting out of box performance like that, there's no need to try to sell rifles. I'm just telling you the truth. And I feel like that too many people in the hunting community kind of want to steer you towards whatever, hunting out a tree stand, a certain brand of things, hunting out of blind. We're not going to do that. We're just going to share our journey with you, what we've learned, the equipment that works for us. And I really want to capture some things that really haven't been done before. This past turkey season, I didn't kill a turkey. And the reason that I didn't kill a turkey was because my entire first week was kind of dedicated to taking my brother-in-law, who lives in Washington State, turkey hunt for the first time. His name's Dustin, and we obviously met when me and my wife got married. We became pretty fast friends, and we had discussed different stuff throughout the years. At this point in time, I was hunting. He was in at one point in time, and I took him coyote hunting. We ended up seeing a coyote, and sorry, Dustin, but he missed it. And so I think it started the bug for him as well. Kind of being out there, experiencing everything. It's life in HD like you've never seen it before. Everything's crisper, cleaner. You just feel more free, closer to the heavens or gods or whatever you want to say. More so than I've ever felt in any church, and it's a very freeing experience for someone that's never experienced it. Especially I remember kind of my first times being out there, seeing everything, taking your senses in. Your eyes become better, your ears become better, and you kind of see, kind of the evolution of how humans began to hunt and where it is at now. And so I really think he got the bug, and so we were actually able to capture his first turkey season on video, and from start to finish. We did interviews before and after. We showed it real raw, exactly how it happened. It's not scripted. I make a lot of mistakes with the camera. It's my first time behind the camera. David is kind enough to be behind the camera right now. I hope he's going to be kind of helping us in the future. That way we can get a good cameraman, because obviously when you see the footage, you'll be like, man, Kellen, you are not a good cameraman, which is true, because like for instance, when he shot his first turkey, the camera goes down, and you can hear me and him celebrating, and that's pretty much as real as it gets, and that's kind of what I want to capture with this. I want to bring in new experiences. I want to tell you about my learning experiences. I want to show not only our successes but our failures as well, because I feel like where you learn in hunting is through your failures. And a main goal of this is to kind of showcase Bobby. Bobby he's an encyclopedia of hunting. He's been doing it almost his whole life, unlike me. I'm just been in it for 5 years, didn't have experience with it. Like I said, didn't get to see family members, but he's lived it all. He's lived the trapping, hunting life. So he's seen it all, and he's got such a great personality and so much knowledge. And I feel like it's really going to be, people are going to love him. They're going to probably like him more than me, which I've said from day one, which I'm perfectly fine with, because I want to be able to show my friends, because I know I have a lot of friends that are really good hunters, that have a really compelling story to tell. We'll continue to show Dustin's progression in hunting. It's the logistics of it all with him living in Washington State is going to be difficult, but hopefully maybe be kind of in and out of the state here, and then at some point in time I would like to go there if we can find a spot to hunt and just have some experience hunting different things. And I really want to show Bobby's journey this year. I've been fortunate enough to use the information that he's shared with me and that he's taught me, and the things that I've learned, by making my own mistakes, to take 2 pretty good deer. My first deer was in the high 150s, and this is in the low 120s. I feel very fortunate. At this point in time, this deer was the best one on the farm. As you can see, he doesn't have the best genetics. He was probably 3.5 years old, and he wasn't very tall. and we had some other deer that with better genetics, but he ran them all off. And so really had to take him out to bring the other deer back in and to let them, kind of breed and spread the good genetics. So I've been very fortunate. And, Bobby, he's killed a ton of deer, but I want him to kill a monster this year. And, I'm going to be with him every step of the way. I'm going to be filming him. He's going to take the first shot. He's going to get the first deer. It's not going to be showcasing me. It's going to be showcasing him. And, I hope that the journey is as compelling as mine was, to my big deer. And I want to show that, and I want to show the emotion and everything else that's going to go with it, because it's going to be an emotional roller coaster. We've never really sat in the same blind and deer hunted before. So we're going to do that. And, we know which deer we want to take. And I'm going to stick to my guns unless something else that comes in bigger at that point in time that we haven't seen on camera. And, we're going to show that all to you. As raw and real as it gets. No cool music, no nothing. Just kind of putting it all out there. And, we're just going to show everything and be as loyal to you guys as we can, and be as honest about everything as we can. We're going to continue to evolve in the stuff that we use, the tactics that we use, and just show you our journey along the way. As far as the future goes, hopefully we'll continue to grow the brand. And, for me personally, bow hunting is something that I'm going to try to take on next. Didn't really have the money or the time to try to invest it in a bow this year to begin the learning process, but that's something that I'm going to start early next year or late this year. And so you guys will get to see that as well, just kind of the learning curve that goes with the bow. I've heard it's very difficult, obviously very difficult from a rifle. I find rifle hunting to be incredibly difficult because it's so unpredictable. All of the people that hunt around us, are going to take, deer. And so, everybody acts like rifle hunting is the easiest thing ever. But, like I said, it took me 3 years to harvest a deer. So, I would sit there and have a deer in front of me and be like, okay, you're not ready. Hop the fence and hear a boom and know that deer's gone forever. And so it's hard to manage everything, even with a gun. And a bow's going to add a little bit more to that. So I'm pretty excited about that. We're kind of outgrowing the farm that we're on right now, and plan on hunting new and bigger places and capturing those on film. I was able to do that a little bit with coyote hunting last year. Unfortunately, didn't get it on film, didn't have the camera and the capabilities at that point in time. So this year, as we experience new places with coyote hunting and stuff like that, going to get it on film and have a plan to maybe lease or whatever, some bigger farms in the future. Definitely want to try some, different species. Would love to try elk at this point. I put my name in for the first time this year, didn't get it, which I necessarily didn't expect to, but elk's definitely a goal in the future. Something that's kind of a more attainable goal right now is hog hunting. They're kind of spread into the states that are south of us, with a lot of public land. So definitely going to try to go new places. Try to continue to get Dustin not only come here, but try to go out to Washington State to be able to hunt with Dustin as well, and to continue to bring new people. As I said, David's behind the camera today. We actually got to hunt a little bit together this year, and I'm sure that in the future we're going to be doing that. Would love to continue to bring new people in. The more that we grow into different farms and stuff like that, to maybe try to get people that haven't been behind a gun hunting at all, get them kind of trained and bring them into the process as well, and maybe even try to get some ladies in to hunt and stuff like that. So really want to get new people in, try to grow everything, try to grow the brand, try to grow the people that we have around us, the group, and the camaraderie. So that's really all I had today. I'd like to thank you guys for listening. Thanks to David for providing his time to kind of record everything. And if you guys enjoyed the podcast in general, make sure, like I said, you like us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at Double Axis Podcast. If you enjoyed kind of the hunting part of it today, make sure that you check out Heathens Hunting on Facebook and Instagram. I try to post as much new content as I can and try to share our journey from a pictures or short video as much as I can throughout the week and the months and stuff like that. So until we get all of our footage kind of put together and get it out there on YouTube, we're going to continue to post content and things on the social media pages. You can follow me as well, and I'll put all updates on there. Kellen Winburn at Kentucky Blockbuster 7 on Instagram and Twitter. Make sure you check out Bobby. He's truly a legend of the fall, and he continues to post not only current pictures but past pictures. And anybody that's kind of a student of the game that has appreciation for those that came before us can take a look at some of the pictures that he posts on there of his family members and of his friends and stuff from way back in the day. So you can see that he's an OG in the game and he's been around for a long time. And for me, it's just so refreshing to see, and that's the goal that I have with all of this, is to recreate a group of friends that are able to travel together. And at some point in time, we capture it all on film, and you really get to see the growth of the group. So check him out, Bobby Epperson. He is on Facebook. Got about 1.5 million friends already, so make sure that you get your name in the hat quickly before his friends list fills up. And you can check out Dustin as well. He posted some pictures. We've posted some pictures on Instagram and Facebook of kind of the success of the turkey hunting experience. But we're going to continue to release the footage that we have once we kind of get it all edited out and stuff like that. So Dustin Freeman on Instagram and Facebook, and you can kind of follow his journey as well. Hopefully we'll be getting together soon to do some more hunts, to get some more footage for you guys. So thanks again for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.